you. Set this down here. You guys get wired up. Yeah, we were talking about the seating arrangements down there, and we decided David would be on your far right, and I would be on your far left. That just kind of seemed to work out. I don't know. Somehow, I'm not sure how that happened, but and I want to thank you both for being here and speaking to Kiwanis, and thank John Saxon for helping set this up and arrange it. We've prearranged. I'm going to call these gentlemen by their first names, not of any sign of disrespect, but because I think it just helps make a better conversation if we don't sort of stand on those formalities. Plus, David is a member of this club. Seems kind of strange, Representative Faulkner. When you're a club member, Roger, we're looking for new club members. So, anytime, yeah?
All right, absolutely.
I'm going to give a little biographical information of these two outstanding gentlemen, all of which you can read anywhere. And then I'm going to ask some questions to kind of get a little bit about kind of what motivates them to public service before we get in to talking about the just concluded month or so ago legislative session and maybe the hopes for the next legislative session. Senator Roger Smitherman, born in Montgomery in 1952. You let me know if I get any of this wrong. A Democrat, a lawyer. Has served in the legislature since 1995. Graduate of the University of Montevallo, Miles College Law School. 4 children, and proudly serves Senate District 18. Representative David Faulkner, born in 1968 here in the Birmingham area, and resides in Mountain Brook. Republican lawyer with Christian and Small. Has served in the State House since 2014. Roll Tide, bachelor's degree at Alabama, JD from Alabama. 3 children. When we sat down again, we were talking, and these guys immediately sort of said, let's talk about the cooperation, the things we try to do together. We'll get to that, and we'll get to that probably first, because I presume this conversation is going to also focus on some things in which you two may not agree. But the first question I want to pose, and Roger, we'll start with you. What first attracted you to public service?
Believe it or not, I've always had this inkling to try to help people, whether it be young people. There's nothing wrong with people in the middle now, but but young people are either senior citizens. Your upbringing has a lot to do with your impact on how you feel about the needs of people. And I won't say all about my background, but I just simply say this, and you can see how you will go right into the line of really caring about people. That's one of the first elements really in being a public servant. You got to care about people. And in my situation, it was that, when you're 7 years old and your father has a serious stroke, then he becomes an invalid. You got a sister that's 1 and you 7. And then when you get 16, after taking care of your father and all those different things I will talk about now, then your mother comes down with leukemia. So now you got 2 parents and you got a sister, and you have to care. You have to care, and you know the importance of people's needs and things they need, whether it's Medicaid, whatever it is, you understand that. So you bring that experience with you, and that got me involved. The next experience was that I realized that if you address people's issues and needs, that's what people care about more than any of this stuff you talk about. Being at Montevallo, I was there at a time where, just to give you a visual, I'm the generation that integrated. We were the 16, 17, and 18-year-olds when you first had not integration to integration. So to go to a setting like University of Montevallo, and there's 3,000 students, and there's only 40 students look like me, and then I run campus wide for a position, and all my opponents don't look like me, and I won. That told me a lot about, as I'm in politics now, that the key is to address the need of people, and you care about them. All people have a similar need and feelings. Most people don't recognize that.
Yeah.
Because the fraternity I was in at Montevallo, Initially, I was the only person in the fraternity that looked like me.
Got it.
So you can understand what I'm saying. My involvement was so I hate to use the word, but integrated with people that I look at people and have a kind of, I feel a little better understanding of values, even if they're not my values. But, and so put all those things together, then you can see how the having the need and the desire to help people was present.
Great, thank you. David, same question to you. What motivated you to public service? And you replaced a man who happens to be sitting in this room.
Yes, Paul
Yeah.
did a great job in this position prior to me having the opportunity to serve and represent people. And, you know, a lot of what Roger said is true. I think the way that you've been raised in your upbringing has a lot to do with wanting to serve other people. In being a lawyer, we represent our clients. And I enjoy that very much in trying to get a result for them to help them in my case, in civil defense litigation. So public service is very much the same way being in this position. I'm representing 50,000 people, and it's my job to, you know, carry their interest forward in Montgomery. Look at issues, because we have a representative form of government. So, but Roger's a lot of wisdom in what he said, and first I want to commend him. You know, he is, Roger, I think 30 years?
Yeah.
30 years. Senator Wagner and Roger have both been mentors for me. Roger being on the Democrat side, you know, Jabo being on the Republican side, but I want to commend him and thank him for his years of service in the legislature.
Thank you.
You know, if he and Jabo get together on something, it's rare that it doesn't happen. Birmingham Southern may be our only one where that didn't happen, but I appreciate his service and what he's done for people. He works very hard, and a lot of wisdom in what he said about people really don't care how much you know, care about how much you know, unless they know how much you care. And that is so true in politics. I feel that it's helping people with their issues and their needs, letting them know you do care, but I don't always agree with all the people I represent. But you listen to them, hear where they're coming from, why are they saying what they're saying, and then you do your best to go and listen to all the people you serve and go back and do that. But I think just after about almost 20 years of practicing law, I started praying, and I said, God, there has to be more. This can't just be what I'm supposed to do is just practice law. I just had this calling that there was more to do, and at that time I was asked to run for circuit court judge. Made an unsuccessful bid for that, and then it was like this position opened when my good friend Paul ran for Congress, and I said, Lord, now I know what this was about. And I just felt very committed, but that's where it came from.
David, by political standards and definitions, you're a conservative. What makes you a conservative? What about your background? What about your formation makes you who you are politically?
Well, again, I think the way you're raised, you know, has a big part of where our lives go. I'm very grateful to my parents. Give a shout out to my two great uncles sitting here at this table and my aunt, Pat and Enid Camp and Tom Boulware, part of the family. And now with having lost my parents, both of them in the last 4 years, I mean, if I need advice and consult, I mean, this is my, you know, the wisdom and family members I seek. But I think being what I would say puts me as a conservative, puts me as a Republican if you give me labels. I think it's a belief that in less government, a belief that government shouldn't be doing everything. If you're at the core of why I'm a conservative, I do not believe government should be doing everything. And I believe the more government grows, I think that's not a good position. I would rather I want all people to have an opportunity to succeed in this country, certainly in the state of Alabama. But I don't believe that government should be doing everything. I think it should be up to people to decide what they want to do with the money that they've earned. And that probably more than anything would put me on that side. My faith's a big part of who I am, my life. And that obviously is a lens in which you see the world. I believe that in being kind to other people. I'm not saying that's a Republican conservative thing. That's true for Roger too. But I believe very much in being what I would call a compassionate conservative, trying to figure out what people's needs are. But we got to figure out a way to pay for things. And I don't believe government should be taking all the money and making those decisions. I believe those decisions should be yours. I mean, obviously, we have to have things like a national defense. We have to have schools. We have to have, services that are provided to our communities, and we want to pay for those. But we continue to see government grow and the debt grow, and those are the things that concern me the most.
Got it. Roger, you alluded to your experience in Montevallo as a student. What shaped you into the political identity that you have and that you pursue in Montgomery?
Well, it started out at Montevallo, and for the few people that may know, we had a professor. She was an attorney, and her name was Dr. Sarah Ruth Morgan. And Dr. Morgan taught state and local government. And I took that class, and that started me focusing on the fact that being in the Senate, David, I said, can you believe it? In this whole big state of Alabama, there's 35 people there. That's what I said, 35 of them. And I said, they must do a lot of things just at 35 people at the area. So that started me to focus in there. But also, I must tell you this little quick story when you see really what focus you there. I was a volunteer at the YMCA or YWCA, and I was coaching little kids soccer. And just for the record, everyone, this is my 44th year coaching. I coach boys basketball now at Ramsey High School. I still coach. And yes, I don't take a dime for coaching, 44 years. And I'm a certified Alabama High School Athletic Association coach. But I was coaching, and the legislature was getting a grant for I think it's the what they call it, the All Kids program. It's for the All Kids program. And the person who was serving in this position, because they were in a political battle, they were blocking everything that was coming. And so the unusual thing about it, the person who was there, they only lived a block and a half from me on the same street. The oldest daughter and I was the same year in college. The youngest daughter was 2 years behind them. And their son and my son, which was my oldest child, they were friends. So it is, I'm saying, look, stop blocking this money I need for these kids. And of course, it wasn't intentionally trying to hurt the kids, but in this political, the kids were caught up in the middle. So I told them after a couple of years, I said, now, if you do this again, I said, I'm going to run against you. You won't believe it. People talk about all these reasons people go to, that was my reason, really, these kids. I'm coaching. I said, if you do it one more time, I'm going to run against you. I want you to understand that. And so, sure enough, he did it again, and well, I ran, and I'll say this: the kids knew why I was doing it for them.
Yeah.
I didn't have a dime, really, any money, and those kids volunteered their whole days and lives and everything, trying to help and do whatever they could. But that was the pivotal point for me, there, at that point, because I had never run for city council. Never run for House Representative. I never run for County Commission. None of that. I just came straight off the street and ran for Senate.
Yeah.
And the key thing is that I try to bring that practical approach. Just like if one of y'all was down there. Not all this political thinking thing. I just try to bring the most simple, practical approach. Mm-hmm. In conclusion, I'm gonna say this: when I bagged out the first day, my wife, and you all know Carol, just remember, was standing on the porch. And she told me, this is what she told me, and this is really, and I think David will attest to this, probably he'd be my guide the whole time. She said, Roger, she said, you're going to have issues over here that are ours. She said, you're going to have issues over here that are D's. She said, but I want you to know one thing. And I said, what's that? She said, you know the difference between right and wrong. That's your guide. If it's a D and if it's wrong, it's wrong. Not because no party. If it's an R, it's wrong. It's whatever is best for the people, and you know the difference between that. So that's what, I've tried to make my guide, even since from the beginning, and even to that point. And so, but I will say this in conclusion. One of the things that we are able to do, and it makes this state run so beautiful, R's or D's, is that the state is committed to diversity. You can't find a board or commission in this state that don't have diversity on it. And that's the legislature. It has nothing to do with R's or D's or anything. The legislature has adopted that. And even if, as you were saying, it's a conservative aspect, when you got somebody there who can let you know the pros and cons, how it affects them, then the legislature works to shape it so that they're not hurt, but yet you're dealing with the aspect of what you were saying from a more conservative financial thing. So I have to commend the state of Alabama for that. It doesn't matter. It was that way when we was in the majority. It's that way right now.
I got a question about diversity in a minute. One more question for you before we get into the nitty-gritty of the session. And this is a lightning round, so no filibustering. I know you did some filibustering this past session. Lightning round. A big issue facing Alabama, if you could fix it single-handedly tomorrow, what would it be? Roger.
I would think the healthcare issue. The healthcare issue. I think that's one of the biggest things that's facing us right now. Mm-hmm. We have a reasonable amount of money right now. Like you said, it's fading a little bit because of federal grants, but I think taking care of the healthcare issue more than anything. Okay. We got all these children dying before birth and at birth, and of course we have Medicaid, we have hospitals closing, in this state. So I think that if we can show up that'll be a tremendous help, economic as well as health-wise. Okay.
David, you?
Easy answer for me, education. To move Alabama, I work on this a lot, but it is complicated. It is like moving the Titanic. But giving every child in this state, regardless of where you live, the opportunity to have a great education that will prepare them for a career or college, to move us from being towards the bottom, moving us up to the top. If I could do one thing and fix it, I would make our schools, our K through 12 and charter schools, I would move them. I'd make them where our kids are getting a first-class education, no matter where they live in this state.
Got it. Let's talk about the session. I alluded to it earlier. You were talking at the table about areas of cooperation between the two of you. Obviously, Birmingham Southern was an attempt at that. What else should we know about your relationship that we don't know?
Well, the senator and I would say, pass a bill usually every session. Sometimes we pass multiple bills together that Roger's the Senate sponsor and I'm the House sponsor. We passed a bill this session. A lot of times I may not necessarily know all of what Roger's bills are, but he'll grab me and say, David, I want you to carry this one. Get this through for me. Jabbo does that to me a little bit. And when my esteemed colleague asked me to do something like that, I'm honored. I have a lot of respect for these guys. They understand the system. They know how things happen. It's also a little bit beneficial to me if I have a bill go up to the Senate. So if I have to have a bill passed, I can go to Roger and, but I know I passed one of Roger's bills down on the House this year, and then we were the co-sponsors, I believe, of the ALI bill for receivership, Commercial Real Estate Receivership Act. So we work together. Certainly we don't always agree, but as lawyers, I think it makes it a little bit easier for Roger and I. We know to go into the courtroom and we have and here it might be on the floor. Of course, I'm not on the Senate. I'm in the House, but we'll have our disagreements from time to time, but far more, we're in agreement. And that's the thing I share with people the most, Chuck, is that y'all see the media and you see Washington and you see constant fighting. Try to think that 90% of what we do in Montgomery is bipartisan.
Sure is.
And so you see the 10%, the differences, and we don't have the level of fighting and that type of thing that goes on in Washington. We have a lot of cooperation. I have great respect for this man, his years of service, and we work well together. And particularly him being a coach. I've always loved working with kids myself, teaching them, coaching them, whether it's Sunday school or on the basketball court. So I love really the way he gives back as a coach.
Yeah, yeah.
I have to just ditto what David just said. I'll paint the picture like this and to show you how solid what David just said is. Just imagine, and I'm not talking about partisan thing, but I'm talking about even from this perspective. Imagine that in the legislature, there's 8 people. At that time, it's 7 now, but there are 8 people in there who look like me. But yet the legislature of Alabama voted me president pro tem of the Alabama Senate. You see what I'm saying? That's an example of what he's saying. That sure you hear about other things, but David, I'm gonna bring in our friend Senator Wagner, and I gotta share this with you all quickly. Is that if you remember our delegation back in the day, and I know some of y'all do, they used to fight among themselves, more among our own selves, our local delegation. It was terrible, but I remember one day we was at the Shakespeare and Festival, well, with the invitation of the governor, and we were sitting there, and all of us at the same table, and I saw Kara and what's the other wife's first name? Marilyn, just talking, and they looking over there at us. They were just talking, and so all of a sudden Marilyn came over there. This was during this period where I first got in the legislature. And she came over there and she grabbed Senator Wagner's hand right here, and she grabbed my hand over here. And she said, y'all gonna sit down right here together. She said, and y'all gonna get along, you know. And her and Carol went off somewhere about their business, and I don't know what they were saying. And you know, we just kind of looked at each other for a minute. We started laughing just like y'all. And of course, ever since then, we've been friends, and we work closer together in the legislature. The other example that really touched me more than not more than anything, but touched me when we were working on the World Games. We had a senator in Gaston, Williams, if you remember, and he had a group, and he was trying to get this money, and he was going to do something else, and we trying to get the money for the World Games. And I'm up at the mic just working myself to death. I'm up there working. And so Senator Wagner sits right here, right in front of the mic, so he got up and just kind of eased up there to me. He said, you don't have to work that hard. He whispered in my ear. And I said, no, I got to work. I got to do what I'm doing. He said, no, you don't. He said, turn around and look behind you. And standing at that mic, it was 16 senators, and 11 of them were Republicans. The rest were Democrats. They are supporting what I was doing at that mic. That's what he's saying about that you see in the legislature. It had nothing to do with these and R, it had nothing to do with my district or somebody else. It was just the right thing to do. And so you find that you have a lot of that goes on in the Alabama legislature.
I want to get kind of into the session, and in particular the kind of early to mid part of the session, there was a flurry of activity, so-called culture wars bills, DEI, divisive concepts, those types of bills. And Senator, you mentioned diversity earlier. The bill passed and was signed by the governor that forbids state funds to go to diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. David, you supported that bill. Could you explain to us just a little bit about your reasoning and rationale?
Yeah, and you know, there was a lot of, belief by members of the legislature that you shouldn't have discrimination against anybody because of their color of their skin, ethnicity, and that there was a lot of money being spent going into programs, and no one that I know of in the legislature is opposed to diversity. as Roger said, we see that in the things we do. Everything we do in there, we have a minority representation, meaning from the minority party, but generally, we have blacks and whites that serve on our committees, and it's just not something that we are, no one's saying. So there's a big push for diversity, but at the same time, not taking it too far to where you're discriminating against someone else. And I think that I wasn't, I did vote for the bill. I wasn't a part of the push of that bill. But I think the amount of dollars and money that people were seeing going into these offices so that you would have a position and a title and you'd have millions of dollars being spent on this. And people felt there was an easier way to accomplish that without that expense. But my reading of the bill is that it is not stopping diversity and inclusion at our schools or universities. That still can be promoted. It was more targeted at the offices and the money that was being promoted and spent in those, and not seeing tangible results. We weren't seeing the results from that. So I think people felt there was an easier way to achieve that. That was my take on the bill. Mm-hmm. I wasn't an author of the bill or that type of thing, but that's the way I took it.
Roger, your take on the bill?
Well,
issues?
I didn't see the necessity for the bill. Mm-hmm. Just to be very frank with you, I didn't see why we needed to have the bill. But after the bill was before us, then at that point, we had to try to make sure that it didn't have what I call the airplane effect. And anybody in the legislature know I give this analysis at the mic. I said that you're trying to focus on this problem, and it's a notable effort because it is a problem. But you're so laser focused on that problem, it's like an airplane going down the runway. Yes, it's focused straight through because it's got to go up. But an airplane also has wings. I said, and those wings are hitting things over here. And these is the incidental problems that happen with the wings. So you've got to get your focus just off of the plane and on the plane and the wings. And in doing that, with the time that we had to work with, we put on, how many amendments? 40, 50 amendments on it to make sure that we would isolate certain programs that was promoting in a very positive way, that they wasn't wiped out. I'll give you one example. I think it's the minority females engineering program at Auburn. That program in itself was one of them that was made one of the exceptions. Like the Office of Minority Affairs for the governor. That bill would have wiped it out. But the amendment says that no, that's not the case. Even the minority leaders, in the legislature. So we went in and kind of established some of those. But then the overall theme that we worked to try to put it on is kind of what David said at the end there, was that, look, don't cut out your efforts. Just make sure you have it understood that everybody can come and be a part, anybody who want to. Not just even this one group, but the efforts, you don't cut them out. And we actually do that in the legislature now. The ethics law said we have to have, was set up because it was 12 people in our caucus instead of 8 at the time. So they said 12 or more people you can call the overall meeting or whatever, conference, whatever. And then, of course, now that it says that you have to at least have 12 folks invited. So you see the difference? It's just an overall inclusion. We invite ours, and, sometimes they come, sometimes they don't, but that's fine too. But I think that it's like this, is in a conclusion. I go to the mic once a month on Tuesday, and I ask for a moment of personal privilege. And the Lieutenant Governor Ainsworth gives it to me. And I said this, I said, Roger Smitherman, Senate District 18, reporting for duty. It's my job today to take your rules and your tools and be successful for my people back in Senate District 18. And that's the same approach we took to that. It's here, so now how can this work that it still is an open opportunity to be able to have everyone come together and exposed to the benefits and opportunities. So that's the approach.
And Roger, with these cultural issues, do you feel like your district was well served by them?
Well, I think I put it this way, what we had to work with, I think that we did a good job.
Yeah.
But I think that of course there's some things we could have probably even done better and strengthened it.
Yeah.
We had more time before it actually became law. But I think that we did the best we could with it for the time frame we had to work with.
Okay. I want to work through some other issues, and I want to leave some time for questions. I know there's at least one person out here that wants to ask about Medicaid expansion. But I'll ask about gaming and lottery. Came up again, kind of died on the vine again. David, I know you've been wary about lottery and gaming legislation. What's the future of that?
Yeah, so, this is what I probably talk about the most when I go speak to groups. What I get asked about the most is the lottery. I think my uncle's even shot me a question on that before. When am I going to get, this is what I hear from so many constituents, when am I going to get to vote on a lottery to support education? Why can't I do that? I try to explain it, and it becomes a complicated mess. But the way I would try to explain it is why people don't get to vote on a lottery is not because of anti-gaming or the people that would not support any type of gaming. It comes because the casinos, and there's two really different camps there. The casinos do not want to let the lottery go and have you vote on it without them being attached to it. When the bill was first presented to us, and the bill came out of the House this year, right. And our leadership, not all of us, but our leadership got behind it, and that bill had casinos, it had sports betting, and it had the lottery. All in one package. It was a massive package. It would put about 11 casinos around the state of Alabama. And it passed out of the House and got up to the Senate. But, I had said at the beginning, let's let the people vote on this, but if you're going to pass this, pass it in separate silos. Let's have casinos voted on by the people. Let's really let the people vote. And instead, what my constituents were getting was text messages. Representative Faulkner doesn't want to let you vote on, tell Representative Faulkner to let you vote on a lottery. And I'm like, well, you're not getting to vote on a lottery. You're getting to vote on, you either got all of this or you get nothing. And what I am told in my read of it is, and certainly the senators been around and more wise on this than me to read what's behind the curtain. But I see it as the casino interest, that being the Poarch Creek Indians, and then the casino interest of our 19 locally constitutional legal areas. And it's not table games, but you know what I mean, like the race course track here.
Right.
Those interests do not want you to vote on just a lottery. They want it to be with that. They feel like if they unhitch their wagon from that, they're gone. Because we know the polling numbers, even among Republicans, is very high for a lottery that goes to education. The numbers come down on other items, but they don't want to unhitch from that. And it's frustrating. I know it's frustrating for constituents because this is what I hear all the time. Why can't we have a lottery like all the states around us? And it came out of the House, this full package still came out of the House, got to the Senate changed it, then it went to a conference committee. The conference committee came out with something new. The senator who carried the gambling legislation in the Senate, who signed the conference committee report, one of 6, voted no when it got to the floor, and it lost by 1 vote. Now, it was a different bill. It had been thinned down from what originally came out of the House, but
Yeah.
That's probably enough.
The art
I
of
don't want to
compromise.
filibuster.
Yeah, exactly. Don't filibuster. And Senator, I'll let you respond to the lottery, but I want to leave some time for questions. Is it okay if we take some questions first, and then if you want to work?
Either way you want to do it.
Okay. Questions from the floor. David, I think you might have a question.
Roger. David. Hello.
David.
First, thank you for your service. I know it's because you have it in your heart to serve the people of Alabama. There's a young lady that lives not too far from here. She's a single mom. She has 2 young children, and she works 2 jobs to try to make ends meet. She makes about $25,000 a year working these 2 jobs. When she puts her head on the pillow at night, you can only imagine what she thinks, that if she gets sick and doesn't have access to health care, how's she going to keep her jobs? She makes too much money to qualify for Medicaid as currently written for this state, and she doesn't make enough money to buy health care insurance through the health care program. She's one of over 300,000 people in this state that do not have access to health care because we will not expand Medicaid. You talk about compassion. I believe that health care in this state is a right, and it's not an entitlement. And we can do something about it. Every economic impact study that's been done over the last 5 years, the one that Parka recently did about 2 years ago, clearly shows that we can well afford the match under the federal government's program going forward. So you have an economic impact in that we are leaving millions and millions of dollars on the table that are having dramatic impact on rural hospitals being able to stay open, impacts on UAB and St. Vincent's and other healthcare institutions who do not turn away people because they don't have insurance, but they don't have coverage. They don't get paid for that. So you have the economic impact, which is devastating to this state. And then you have the moral issue. Why aren't we doing what we need to do to ensure that over 300,000 Alabamians have access to health care? I submit to you, if the great state of Arkansas or the great state of North Carolina can get their act together, Republicans and Democrats, and expand Medicaid, we can do it. We're one of 10 states, think about that, one of 10 states that have not expanded Medicaid. I'm embarrassed. I really am embarrassed for our state. And everybody here knows that I talk about this.
Yeah.
So I've never asked this question. How many of you here are in favor of Medicaid expansion? I don't know what else you need to
Let's
see.
let them respond. 'Cause we're
Yeah,
kind of,
I'm going to stop, but I seldom have this opportunity. So I really do call upon you guys, come on, get your hands together, solve the riddle, expand Medicaid. Thank you.
I'll be quick, David, and I'll leave you
No, you
some time.
take your time.
I'll be quick. I'll be quick on this. All I can say to what you just said is ditto, ditto, and a ditto again. Okay, I agree with you, 1,000%. We started out with the problems and just, call it for what it is. That y'all know that's why I normally do things anyway. It's just that it started out simply because President Obama pushed it. Nobody was going to take it. It's politics. It's just that simple. That's what started us off at first. We had a lot of money, extra money. We still have enough money to do what we're going to do. Then the next thing came about was, when we quit getting these grant money, we were going to have to then go into the state's coffin and pull that amount out to pay the match versus being able to pay it here. So that's part of the resistance that's been there as well. I agree with you. I told him, I said, I don't care if you call it Alabama Care, not Obamacare. It can be Alabama Care. It can be any kind of care, but we need the money in here. And yes, it's been like pulling hen's teeth and getting a majority of legislators in both of our chambers to anchor down and to dig in on that. But I agree with you.
David, your thoughts?
Yeah, I've obviously heard the question and from my good friend David before at Kiwanis, and I saw the Parker report. I think Ryan's here. The Parker report, and I've seen the numbers, and I understand their position. I understand where they're coming from about the hospitals and how, it would be a win-win that Alabama puts more money in, but we get reimbursed by the federal government. So this has been out there. Alabama is about $1.5 billion on dollars spent on Medicaid for health care for the poor. It is about 30% of our general fund budget is spent on Medicaid. It's close to that out of the general fund. So there is a lot of money. It's what I've talked about in terms of government growing. The change in perception is real, that we now do much more. You look at where healthcare, as David said, he believes healthcare is a right. But that's changed over time. That didn't used to be the perception of most people. I think probably what I hear, there's never been a bill before the legislature. David knows this, and Roger, but I want to make sure you know this. I haven't ever had a bill to vote on regarding Medicaid expansion. Roger, I think's got you. But there's never been a bill for us to vote on, for us to that I voted no on, or ever even been pushed that I'm aware of. I think the governor would do it. Would be the one to make the decision. I think then we'd have to allocate the dollars if she chose to do it.
Right.
So I think it's a governor's decision. But the work requirements is something I hear about why that the Biden administration will not approve any work requirements. That's one thing I hear as a reason that people are against it, in addition to maybe just the growing of government, the resources being allocated from something else, big government. But that's my thoughts on it.
Okay, yeah.
I would just quickly say that there have been some bills introduced way back at the time, but they never made it to the agendas of the committees.
Got it. Yeah.
So he's right, he hadn't had a chance to vote on them because they haven't been brought up
Yeah.
to the committee agendas.
Tracy, I know we're getting close to time. One more question? Yeah.
Thank you very much. I will be short, quick. Alabama has one of the largest per capita communities of imprisoned people. We have a board of pardons and paroles that's basically non-functional. No one who otherwise is deserving can get a parole out of our overcrowded prisons. We have no concept of what is just and not, and we have penitentiaries that are full of nonviolent people who perhaps had possession of marijuana and other substances. What is the legislature thinking about as far as coming to the 21st century, as far as boards, pardons, and paroles, that we can turn some of these people who are otherwise meritorious out of our overcrowded prisons as part of the prison expansion program? I don't think our boards of pardons and paroles granted but one parole last year. And yet the legislature stands totally mute on it. It's not just an executive function. Please don't tell me that. You gentlemen could hold hearings, could expose the present Board of Pardons and Paroles as a non-entity, and let's join the rest of the country as far as looking
Gentlemen, yeah, if you can handle that in about 30 seconds, that'd be great.
I'll just say that you're right about that, and one of the things that we have to do, first of all, in confirmations, when they come before the confirmations committee and the Senate, is to address those issues. The other thing is that it's been recognized a long time, what you just said. Judge Pryor of the 11th Circuit, when he was Attorney General, and we created the Sentencing Commission because of what you just said. The disparity and even in areas. One area, you take a lawnmower, you get 5 years. Up here, you take a lawnmower, you have to pay the person back and get probation. You know, so that was the attention to what you said was drawn. But you are right, and that's something that we need to, as we move forward, dive into it as a legislature.
David, do you want to comment?
Yeah,
at all?
we passed a lot of bills there's a lot of things I've seen come through that have tried to lower our prison population, that have focused on nonviolent people not being in prison. But you know, there's always a push for criminal justice reform. Chris England drops bills a lot for that in the House, I know. But I wouldn't really have anything to add. That,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. This program could have been 2 hours long. There's a long list of issues we didn't get to, but I really appreciate you, and I know the Kiwanis Club does too. Thank you for being here and for being honest and frank and answering our
Thanks for having me.
questions. Yeah.
Totally agree. It could have gone on and on. Thank you so very much, Representative Faulkner, Senator Smitherman, and Chuck, for your time with us today and for your enlightening discussions and for your work throughout our state. It's good work, and we appreciate what you're doing. Kiwanians, with your help, the club's Each One Bring One membership initiative will deepen our position as the foremost civic engagement and business club in our city.